All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm glad to have you all here with us. And I'm Sheila. I'll be presenting to you today. I live in Toronto, Canada, but sometimes I can also be found in Europe. It'd be great to see where you are. If you haven't already done so, please say hi in the chat and tell us where you are. I see some Canadians here, some people from South Africa, Washington, D.C., some Canadians are there. Irish living in Italy. All right. South Africa again, Iran, Belgium, Trinidad and Tobago, Netherlands, the Caribbeans brings us back some good memories. Santiago, Chile. Very nice. Thank you, everybody, for that. Just to introduce myself a little bit, I've been a teacher for about 120 years. Just kidding. I actually been teaching for over 25 years, and that includes teaching English as a second language and teacher training. During that time, I have taught in different countries such as Canada and Hungary. I've also taught people from all over the world, such as students from Brazil, Peru, Mexico, Egypt, Pakistan, India, lots from China, of course, some from Korea, Japan, Italy, Switzerland, Spain, really from every corner of the world, which is nice because they teach me too. I don't just teach them. So, what are we going to do today this is going to be an introduction to teaching grammar. So hopefully you'll be able to pick up some pointers to help you become a better teacher of grammar. It's a little bit scary. I'll share something one of my students told me, teacher, I know many grammar rules, but I can't use them. So this is a common thing that we hear. Yes, they do know the rules. Um, but just articles alone, there are 39 different rules. So when students speak or write or communicate, they do have trouble using all those rules. And no wonder, how many grammar rules are there? Can you put it in the chat, please? I want to see a number of rules that you think there are about grammar. Just to help you out, it's more than 100 for sure. Yeah, there are many. That's right. Actually, there are over 200, about 207 rules. So really, it would be nearly impossible to teach them all. So we need to be selective, right? To teach students what they need to know. So that's what we'll be considering today, what factors to consider and some tips to help you teach grammar. So this webinar will help you with these concepts. So here's a brief outline. So what to teach and how to teach it. And we'll try to cover that in the first half of the webinar. And then the second half will give you a chance to ask questions. So we'll have a Q&A session. All right. So let's look at some FAQs first, some frequently asked questions. So where do you find resources? Will you teach online or in a traditional setting? That's another consideration. What if students ask difficult questions? And then I'll also ask you to look at the ideal order of activities, which one you would start with first. So if you're answering the first question, put number 1 in the comments. If you're answering the second question, put number 2. For the third question, put number 3. And for the fourth question, put number 4 and just the letter of what you would teach first. Okay, go ahead, put it in the comments, please. Give you a minute to do that. Okay, Amanda got it right for the last question. It is indeed be, the verb to be. And the reason is because this is one of the most common things, right? As soon as you describe your surroundings, there is a table, there is a chair, there are some chairs. So it's one of the first things students need to learn. So yes, definitely start with that. Okay, most of you will be teaching online. Whatever you teach in a traditional setting, you can transfer that to teaching online. Actually, you have some of the things are easier to do online than you think. For example, if I'm on Zoom, I can share the whiteboard. The students have access to the whiteboard, all of them. I put up the whiteboard and they can all write on it all at the same time, which would be not that easy in a traditional classroom. So actually, it gives us more opportunities if you end up teaching online, whether it's one-on-one setting or a class setting. Yeah, most of you will be teaching online. Good, good. And teaching in a traditional setting is actually like learning to drive a car in automatic setting. Teaching online, it's more like a manual, so manual gear. So if you know how to drive manual, it's easy to shift to an automatic setting. Resources, as far as resources are concerned, if you end up teaching for a school, the school will have its own library or of resources. And of course, it's also a good idea to build up your own resources. If you do find something online, you just have to make sure that it's a reliable resource because there are a lot of mistakes online. So you have to be careful to make sure to choose something that is appropriate and does not have mistakes, or if it does have mistakes, you correct them. And you also develop your own resources as you gain more experience teaching grammar. Just keep them organized. And remember to network with your colleagues as well. They will help you a lot with difficult students, difficult topics. And then when new teachers come in, you also will help them. You pay it forward. As far as teaching online, we've talked about it already. And this is also a nice feature that we're using right now, the comments feature. You get immediate feedback, almost immediate feedback when you are teaching. If you make it available for your students, you can block it off, of course, as well. The students can ask you questions, they can give you feedback right away without really interrupting the class. So again, that's a nice function that many of the platforms have, whether you use Zoom or Skype. I think you can use Microsoft Teams as well, and there are other platforms. Now, difficult questions, I haven't really seen an answer to that yet. Maybe the question itself is difficult. Number 3, did anybody answer number 3? Not yet, because the question itself can be tricky. Yes, okay. Some young boy mentioned it's okay to say, I don't know. I will do some research and get back to you. Yeah, that's exactly right. Let me find out about that and do get back to the students at the next opportunity, or let them find out what the answer is. You can turn it into a project or some kind of homework if you wish to do that. So don't worry, you don't have to know everything in order to teach grammar. You just want to try to stay one step ahead of the students. All right. Well done, everybody. Well done. I want you to raise your right hand, put it on your left shoulder, and give yourself a pat on the back. Well done. You answered these questions well. Let's continue with our next slide. What to teach? MFP. Those of you who have gone through some of the TEFL material might already be familiar with this. So M stands for meaning, F for function, and P for the pronunciation. Yes, we do need to teach pronunciation as well when it comes to grammar, which surprises some people, I know. So meaning, what does it mean? If you look at Picasso's painting, my example here, what does the S stand for? What does it mean? Why do we have an apostrophe S there? It shows possession. Exactly. What's another way to say this? You could say it's a painting of Picasso. So the of, the OF, the preposition, is replaced by the apostrophe S so that we know what it means. Function or use, why is it used? You can use the apostrophe S. You can use a possessive determiner like his, this is his painting, or as I mentioned, a preposition, painting of Picasso. Good, good. And for the pronunciation, these are the 3 ways to pronounce an S. It could be an S, a Z, or is. Like if you think of bus, the plural of bus is buses, right? Yeah. Boy, boys, right? So the S turns into a Z. In this case, Picasso's, it just remains an S. Okay. Or sometimes we don't have an S after the apostrophe. For example, the students' homework. So the homework of students, if it's many students, we just have S, apostrophe, and there's nothing after it because the last letter is already an S. So these are some of the things that we would need to teach when it comes to grammar. So it's good to be prepared to teach the materials so to make sure that you're comfortable with it. And how do you put this in a lesson format? That's what we're going to take a look at next. The next slide. You might have heard of the PPP lesson planning method, and that's the deductive approach. It's kind of the traditional way. So present, practice, and produce. So the first P, present. You present the new language and try to make it in a meaningful context. Just set up a situation where the students get the meaning. Otherwise, if they're just filling in fill in the blank exercise, it might not be very meaningful. But let's set up a context for them. Practice. What kind of practice? You can do controlled and semi-controlled tasks. For example, if the students have to put in a verb tense and you give the word in bracket like walk, and they have to say walked, the ed, for example, the simple past, that would be a controlled practice. If I say I went to the library yesterday and the students finish the other half of the sentence, that would be an example of a semi-controlled task, because you give them some clues, but then they have more freedom to use the material. And then last but not least is produce, which means the students use the target language that we've just taught them, the simple past, for example, and they use it in a meaningful setting. And they produce the language itself. And that is perhaps the most challenging part, but it really tells us whether they have learned the new material or not. And in a traditional classroom, a lot of teachers used to spend a lot of time on presenting the material. Do not make that mistake, because this part, it should just be in an hour lesson, no more than 15, 20 minutes maximum, because we want to give at least 20 minutes to the students to practice and another 20 minutes to produce the language, just as an example for a 1 hour lesson. So it's no longer the teacher lecturing for 50 minutes and then they have 10 minutes to do a little bit of practice. That's the old way of teaching. The communicative way, the more modern way, it breaks it down this way. And the old way was a lot of focus on form without the meaning. It was John and Mary went to the library. Well, who's John and who is Mary? I want to know, right? So create some context. But if you say I went to the library, then you, as a teacher, it creates that context for the students, and you can also ask students to come up with personal examples about themselves, and it makes it more meaningful and memorable for them so that they can use this information in future lessons. So let's take a look at some examples of these. For example, I'm heading out now, so I should be there until 3 p.m. This one has a mistake. And the mistake you probably figured out is until. So I'll put that in the chat. And then the correct form would be, I should be there, think, until, yeah, that's the mistake. And the correct form is, I should be there by 3 p.m. So at the latest. So that's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to put the number, the mistake, and the correction in the chat. So by 3 p.m. meaning the latest. So it's possibly before that. Maybe it's 2:45, 2:50, 2:55. But at the latest, by 3 p.m. I'll be there. Excellent. Thank you, Nafisash, for putting that. Okay, and I'll give you some time to think about 2, 3, and 4. Good. Yes. Yeah. Instead of can you tell me what time is it? Tell me what time it is. And the issue here is called an embedded question. Yes, good. So what time is it is a direct question, but what time it is an embedded question. Good. Thank you. Number 3. I went to the hockey game last night. Yes, Sarah is correct. Instead of have you gone, it's did you. Because yesterday is finished. We can no longer say have you. If it were today, the game, then we could still say, yes, have you gone to the game today? But yesterday is finished, simple past. We cannot use the present perfect anymore. And this is hard. The present perfect is hard for students to grasp. So we need to provide a lot of practice with that. And the simple past is a good one to compare it with. Last time, the last one, number 4, Petra put, what is the time? Okay, okay. Or if you don't want to change it too much, yes, Harrison, Nafisa, got it. And that's it. That's what I was going for. Do you have, instead of time, do you have the time? And this actually happened to one of my students. This guy walked up to her and then he asked that question, do you have the time? But my student understand the question is, do you have time? Which of course changes the meaning. She thought that he was asking her out. And then I asked her, what did you do? She says, oh, I turned around and ran away. And then I said, the poor guy was just asking what time it was. So it can turn into a seemingly funny situation, but I'm sure it wasn't funny for her at that time. But yeah, that little article makes a huge difference, doesn't it? Right? And articles can be quite challenging for students. So well done, everybody. Again, you guys did an awesome job. Yeah, what is the time? Yeah, that would work too. But do you have the time? It's just the minor change, just the article, adding the definite article. Yeah, well done. All right, and here is the key, just in case if you missed anything, I'd like to provide that for the students as well. So the first one was a preposition error. And here the word order, instead of a direct question, we needed an embedded question. The verb tense, have you, did you, and then the article. Yeah, good. All right. Next one. I try to make it bigger, but then I can't see the comments, so I better keep it small. Let's take a look at the next one. Minimal pairs, they are often used in pronunciation, but they can be used in grammar too. Here's an example. This is actually true. True statement. I arrived at the gym at 8, but my trainer left. I arrived at the gym at 8, but my trainer had left. So first question, again, put number 1, did I see my trainer? And then number 2, there are 4 players in the game and everyone can win. There are 4 players in the game and anyone can win. So how many people can win? You could put that in the chat. Yes, Chantal says, I didn't see my trainer, the first one, because in the second example, right? Because head left means the trainer left first and then I arrived. So I didn't see my trainer. In the first example, I got there and then my trainer was leaving at the same time. So in that case, I would have seen him. In number 2, if you say everyone can win, then we're talking about 4 players. Thank you, Chantal. And anyone's game, any of the 4. So it's just the one person. Well done. You guys will make great teachers. I can tell already. Some of the other ways you might have seen the timelines, especially with verb tenses, it's very good for visual learners, and they would match the sentences with the verb tenses. You might not want to do all 12 verb tenses at the same time. It can be overwhelming for them, but you want to be familiar with all 12 verb tenses. You can also use metaphors. And you definitely need a good grammar book. So Grammar in Use is a good one. They have beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels, the 3 levels, with the answer key. So the students can even use it as a self-study, or you can use it in the classroom. Focus on Grammar is also pretty good. By metaphors, I mean, think of the present perfect when a book is still open, while the past, the simple past, is when a book is closed. Right? So when a book is open, You still got opportunities for things to develop. But when it's closed, it has that sense of something being in the past that can no longer be changed. So last year, my English improved or has improved. Well, if it's last year, it improved. What about this year? This year, my English has improved because the book is still open. I still have a chance to continue improving this way. All right. And then if you have questions, feel free to ask me and I'll do my best to answer them later when we get to the Q&A. Here's an example of a chart that you might have seen. This is fairly straightforward. I like this one because it's past, present, future, and then one action, studied, study, will study, and then I had, have, will have studied, and it uses the same verb, study, so it's relevant to student. Now the squiggly line means it will be a long time, and I usually start with the present. I am studying, I was studying, I will be studying. So notice the ing is present in all three of them because it is a long action. The only thing that changes is the helping verb. Was, am, and will be. Right? So it's good to make students aware of that. And then the last one, I had been, have been, will have been. Again, there is the continuum and the length of time to show the past perfect continuous, for example. And again, you want to break this down into smaller pieces for students that don't want to teach them all at once. You do one or two at a time, verb tenses, and then you work your way up. And if you think about it, you mostly need about 6 verb tenses. Right? The ones at the bottom, you don't really need them that much, but it's good to make students aware that they do exist. And then the meaning is also important, that you want to use it in a situation so that students remember the meaning, and try to focus on the most common use and try to use the KISS principle, keep it short and simple so that they do understand it and hopefully will be able to use it. Now, here are some further tips. Practice, practice, practice. So provide a lot of opportunities. As we mentioned, finish the sentence. Jeopardy, you might be familiar. Matching sentences. The CFR levels are the European levels, but of course, if you use a different one, like Canada uses the CLB, for example, the Canadian Language Benchmark, you can use that, or you can use IELTS levels if you teach IELTS. And this is a good one, fix the mistakes. I ask students to bring in examples of mistakes, and they do. They really love finding mistakes, and they bring them in, teacher, is that right? And then we figure out why it is not right and how you would correct it. There was actually a town in the Maritimes in Eastern Canada where they made the use of apostrophe as illegal because people could not use them properly. And then when it comes to planning, just think about, what do students want to learn? What do they have most trouble with? So these are wants and these are needs, and we need to compare them. What are the resources that are available? If you're going to go overseas, don't assume that you're going to find something online. You might not have access to Wi-Fi. So take a good grammar book with you. Textbooks, audio materials, songs, ads, and then make sure to include the students' interests. So it's good to do a needs assessment at the beginning of the semester and try to include some authentic materials. It's really helpful, and use some pop culture examples as well. Justin Bieber, who doesn't want to learn about Justin Bieber, for example? Just kidding. Before the lesson, I'll look at the current and relevant topics, and then also decide, what am I going to connect the grammar skills to? Is it going to be connected to a listening activity? Will they be reading something? So decide that in advance. Popular movies, books are good to include. Sometimes technology, if you have some available, take advantage of that. And some of the apps are really helpful. If you don't know any, just ask your students. They will tell you about Duolingo and some of these other ones. During the lesson, it's good to actually share the objectives with the students. And then that way they can kind of buy into it, and then they know what the outcome of it will be. By the end of the lesson, they'll be able to do this, and this. Make it age appropriate, of course, the material, the visuals, and then it's good to group students in various ways. Don't just have a teacher-class discussion. Have them in pairs, have them in groups of 3, groups of 4, or 2 big groups, different ways. And then the activities, we've already talked about that. And then keep them fairly short, maximum 20 minutes for an activity or less. Otherwise, students get bored. So watch the timing, keep lessons engaging, interactive, and don't just lecture. That's old school, right? Make it fun and memorable for them. And then after the lesson, decide if you're going to assign any homework and how are you going to assess whether they have learned what you want them to learn. And it's important to recycle the target structures. We're not talking about in the environment here. We're talking about reusing the previously taught ideas, because it's good for students to see them again. With vocabulary, we say 7 to 10 times. With grammar, at least 5 to 6 times. It's good for them to see the structures again. And then at the end, make sure to do a short reflection. How did it go? How did the students respond? What were the things that went well? Anything to improve? And what would you change, if anything? I always keep tweaking the lessons to make sure that it fits the students, because it might be the same material, but the students are always different, right? So you always cater to the needs of the students. So in summary, show students what they have learned, show them how it's useful, and always keep looking for examples that you can use in your lesson. And remember, you don't need to know everything about grammar. You will be fine. So these are just some of the factors to consider before jumping into grammar. Good preparation will help you succeed, to delivery, and then remember to reflect at the end on what you have taught and how the lesson went, and then students will be successful and will be able to use those skills that you teach them. All right, so don't need to know everything. Don't worry, it can be challenging even for native speakers, so we're all in the same boat, so to speak. Try to stay one step ahead of them. And then in closing, I'd like to share a tongue twister with you that is also an alliteration. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. Try saying that 5 times and see if you can say it faster and faster. All right, so that's all I wanted to share with you today. And now I open up the floor to questions. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And then at the end, there's also going to be a short survey to complete. And I can share that with you guys. All right. All right, so let's go back to this section. So feel free to ask any questions if you haven't already done so. Some of you think that there are 12 word tenses. Did you come up with 2 more new ones? There are actually 12. Yeah, thanks, Alicia. Yeah. All right, I think 12 is enough. The 4 players. Okay, Sarah, thank you for that question. So if you say this is anyone's game, means anybody still has a chance to win, but there's only going to be one winner, right? But if you say everyone can win, that means each person on the team can be a winner. So all four of them can be winners. Does that make sense, Sarah? Let me know in the chat. Okay. Thank you, Petro. Thank you, Jordan, for the words of appreciation. And feel free to ask me if you have questions about anything that we have covered today or anything related to teaching grammar. I'll be glad to answer them if I can. Do you have any advice to keep children motivated while learning grammar? Asks Shar. Yeah, that's a good question. Now, with children, you got to keep in mind the shorter attention span, right? So if you got a 6-year-old, keep the activities about 6 minutes. An 8-year-old, keep it about 8 minutes, so about a minute per age, and make it engaging. Get them out of their seats, get them to move around. Remember, kinesthetic learners, they like to touch things and move around. Some children tend to have a lot of energy. So keep them engaged. If you want them to do matching activity, you can have them on pieces of paper and they have to get up and find a partner to match it, for example, right? So that's one way to get them moving around. And then once they finish that, then you move on to the next activity. And again, keep it short. Yeah. The students who go through the fastest through material, can you guys guess what age group? Is it kids, teenagers, adults, or the elderly? It is actually teenagers. They'll keep you on your toes. So you always want to have extra um, material prepared for them because they burn through material like that. All right. Chantal is asking, when doing lessons with 4 or 5-year-olds who can't read or write, even in their, or who cannot read or write even in their native, what are some tips? All right, that's a good question. So that means most of your activities will be auditory, right? For auditory learners. So it's going to be speaking and listening and visuals. You'll be working with pictures, realia. You can bring in items and then they can work with it. Even in online setting, show me something yellow, for example, and we'll show you something yellow and you'll have to figure out what that is. This one happens to be a highlighter, but they might show you a sticky note or something, and now we have to describe it, and we're still using good grammar to describe those items. For example, you can focus on connectors. I can describe the shape, the color, and the material using and furthermore, in addition, things like that. So yeah, there's still lots you can do with kids. You just have to keep them engaged and orally. All right, Felicia asks, do we need to use a source to demonstrate a timeline in the assignment, or can we draw up your own? You can do either one. Yeah, you can use something that is already prepared, or you can draw your own. If you're drawing your own, that's fine. You just have to make sure that it can be easily read, like your handwriting and the table has to be nice and clear for the students to see, because you will probably use that in your own lesson eventually. So it's nice to have it already prepared. So that's fine if you want to prepare your own. That's no problem. All right, what else? Oh, Latin, Monty. Yeah, Latin. Yeah, those are more specific to Latin. Those expressions that you mentioned about learning Latin. So I would recommend using the proper terms for English. But even if you don't know what the subjunctive is, it's okay. It's okay as long as you describe how to use it and what does it mean, right? You don't have to know all the fancy terminology. That's not the point of teaching English. Teaching is making sure that the students understand and they're able to communicate effectively. That's the ultimate goal. All right. You would like non-native speakers to be um, near to no fluency. You mean like to be like native speakers almost? Okay. Well, you need to expose them to a lot of practice. Let them practice a lot, right? Yeah. Okay. What else? Speak and understand and be understood. Yeah, that's a good strategy of being understood, especially because even with pronunciation, some students have the goal to be native like, but is that really the ultimate goal to be native like? If you think about it, you just want to be understood. Your pronunciation may never be perfect like that of a native speaker, and that's not really the ultimate goal because for some people that's unrealistic. So really, you just want to be understood by others, comprehensible, and the grammar is similar, even if it's not perfect. You try to get it as good as possible to help students reach their potential. All right, Vegas asks, how does one prepare for a lesson without spending hours on it? Okay, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Well, at the beginning, you do end up spending a little bit more time on it, but then later on, it does get easier, right? It does get shorter. Plus, you already have quite a few lesson plans worked out for yourself. So you can just recycle them, just tweak them a little bit, make it appropriate for your students. And that's the key. So it does get easier. Yeah, you don't have to spend hours and hours. Yeah, that's no fun. Right. Kathy asked, and I'm sorry, Catherine. How do you encourage students not to get so hung up on using the right verb tense or other grammar that they're afraid to speak in the real world situations? Well, yeah, they do worry about that, and worried about being accurate. So we have to tell them that they need to find a right balance between accuracy and fluency, right? Because if it affects their fluency, they slow down significantly, then it's really not worth to be that accurate. However, accuracy is still important. So there has to be a good balance. Just like learning to type, right? When you're learning to type at the beginning, if you keep hitting the wrong keys, there's no point going faster, right? First, we have to learn to hit the right keys, and then you can go faster later on. All right. How long do you recommend? Thank you for that question. How long do you recommend to spend planning a lesson? Well, usually at the beginning, when I started out as a student teacher, if it was a 1 hour lesson, I would spend about 2 hours on it. So it's double the time that is spent in the classroom at the beginning. But then it got to be an hour and a half, and then it's an hour, then it's half an hour. And no, I can probably do it in 10, 15 minutes, right? So it does get easier. And then, like I said, you can recycle um, those lessons then, or you might just need to change a little bit, and then that way it does get the time is much shorter. All right. Okay, Monty says, I was brought up in a strict British boys' school. I doubt I could speak to adults in the way my master spoke to us. I have authority, but they're adults. Okay, well, just do the best. Do the best to speak to them. You can. You will speak with authority, with more experience. And I also don't tell my students to call me ma'am because it makes me feel like I am 80 years old or something. So I just ask them to call me Teacher Sheila. And if they forget my name, they can just call me teacher, which they do sometimes anyway. However, it is weird for them to call me just Sheila by my first name because this is not done traditionally in many countries. So if they really don't want to do that, I can tell them to call me Miss Baker, and they're okay with that. Yeah. All right, but eventually you will find the right tone to speak with each age group. All right. Petro asks, is it wise to create your own syllabus for a student you're teaching one-on-one online, or should one rather stick to existing materials? Um, Again, there is a fine balance. I often create a syllabus for my students because after the initial assessment, I have an idea what they need to improve. I also ask them what they want to improve, but I also have a good idea what they need to work on. And then I create something based on that. But I also use existing materials. I don't create all my materials because that would be too much work. But I have an idea in my head, and then I put that down as a plan. This is the plan. So we need to, for example, work on your speaking. Many of them want to work on their speaking and writing. And the reason is because those two are productive skills, and it's not something you can learn from a textbook. You need somebody to check your work. And grammar is a big part of proper speaking and writing. So they often need a lot of help with that. And then we work from there. We also do vocabulary. We do a little, I try to include a little bit of listening as well, a little bit of writing, speaking, and then grammar is included in those. But if there's some specific point, like articles and punctuation are the most common things they need to work on, then we include that specifically as well. Yeah, and again, you can use something that has already been prepared for you. You just incorporate that into your plan to help your student improve. And then, um, as Confucius says, if you do something that you enjoy doing, you never have to work a day in your life, right? And it's really rewarding to see how much students improve. And you may not need to advertise either. Just word of mouth is the best kind of advertisement. All right. Yeah, sir or ma'am. Yeah, some schools they refer to teachers as such. Okay, most common grammar mistakes for Spanish speakers. They have trouble with pronouncing some of the words. Like the U is notorious. They say everything but you. They say you and everything because the Y is pronounced differently in Spanish. But I don't. Oh, and they tend to put an E before a lot of things because I guess in Spanish that is a common thing to do. So in writing, you'll see. Um, well, especially, yeah, that's actually possible to put an E, but they also put an E before like hotel or something like E hotel. They just put an E there. So that's a common thing. And then it's good to actually, if you know all your students are have the same first language like Spanish, it's actually good to research that area What are the common issues that this age group has? Vietnamese is very different from English, so they need a lot of support. And so do Japanese speakers, because English, for example, is an SVO PT language, subject, verb, object, place, time. But in Japanese, it's an SOV language. So instead of putting the object after the verb, they put it between the subject and the verb. To give you an example, instead of I closed the door, they say the door closed. So you see the doors in the middle, which sounds unnatural to us, but that's why they get confused by the placement of objects. All right, thank you for that. All right, so this is a question about pronunciation. Is it effective if you make them spell the alphabet as, yeah, it's good for them to be familiar with the alphabet because it does help, right? Especially letters like H. Some of them do not know how to pronounce the H properly. Yeah, so it's good. It's good for them to be familiar with that. I even teach the alphabet that the police use. You know, alpha, that kind. If you have to spell your name A as an apple, if you don't want to use alpha. All right. Okay. Anything else here? I'm just looking through the comments. Writing Iranian proper nouns are hard. Where can you find the most reliable source for spelling proper nouns? Well, you know, the internet is a good source. If you want to make sure that it's reliable, I would recommend using Google Scholar, because if you use not just Google but Google Scholar, I'll put it in the chat. If you use that, whatever you get there, everything is research based. So you know it comes from a scholarly source, an academic source. So usually those would be spelled correctly. Yeah. Cantonese is very object based. Okay. So the object is similar to Japanese, you mean? Okay. Yeah. All right. Monty says, yeah, you did learn your ABC. Yep. Yep. So it's logical to do that here as well. All right, we got another 5 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll put the link here for you in the chat if you get a chance to complete the survey. But if you have questions in the meantime, I can still answer them, but you might just want to complete this within the last 5 minutes if you wish. Here it is. Okay, I don't know if this is hyperlinked, but you might be just able to copy and paste it. And my name, I think they'll refer to it as tutor or the facilitator. Yeah, tutor kind of has a different meaning in Canada and other parts of the world, but I think they do that. If they ask my name is Sheila Baker. If you like this webinar, if you didn't like it, my name is Julia. It is hyperlinked. Thanks, Linda. I'm just kidding. All right, how do you find and select resources for your classes? Well, you got to consider again what is the thing that students make the most mistakes with, right? If there's a lot of mistakes with punctuation, articles, count and noun counts, plural, singular, then I consider that as a good thing to go over. Or if you have a student that makes a mistake with the same thing over and over again, then again, that's a good thing to consider. And then I've got quite a few grammar books actually to look through to find a good source, or online. I also find something online, or as I mentioned, if the school has a library, that's also a good thing to consider. Now, YouTube videos, again, you have to be a little bit careful with that because it's not always accurate, but if you do find something that's good, Teacher Adam has got some good videos. If you do a search for him on YouTube, he's pretty good. Okay, I want to. It's calling me Julia already. What are some of the best tips on teaching grammar? Tips that you've learned over time? Um, Sometimes students really only find out the meaning of some of the verb tenses, for example, if you put it in context. For example, if I ask them, have you been to Brazil? And then they don't really think about it as any time in their life. They just think about it like something recently, for example. So, but if I asked them, since you were born until now, have you ever been to Brazil? And then they start thinking about it. Oh yeah, that's right. I have never been there. Or have you eaten sushi? Yes, I have. I don't care when, 10 years ago, last year. So if you personalize it for them, that really makes it more memorable. Yeah. Okay, we've got another minute. If you have anything else, and if you've already done the survey, thank you kindly. If you haven't, please complete it. Otherwise, I would really like to thank you all for being here today. I hope that you got something out of it that you can take with you for your future teaching, and I'd like to wish you all the best in your teaching career. And thank you for choosing the TEFL Academy. Have a good day. Bye.